So Texicurians are here today with Bob and Karen Taylor, and we are going to learn how to do a correct and maybe try to make it easy for you garden. Let me tell you a little bit about Bob and Karen. Bob is retired from NASA, so he thinks very scientifically, and you'll be able to pick that out whenever we're going through this. And I'm going to let Karen tell a little bit about what she's doing because it's so interesting. She's in learning mode.
Yes, so through garden clubs, a National Garden Club sponsored class that I'm taking is a garden study school. I've taken courses 1 and courses 2, and need 2 more courses to be considered a garden consultant. And the classes are taught by a professor out of Rice University. So they're very in-depth, and I've learned so much about gardening, so much. So I'm excited to get to the end of that and not know everything, but almost everything.
All right. So now you know you're here with experts. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we've started with. We're here in the hill country. We have a lot of deer. So we just went and bought, this is just a dog enclosure. And what's nice about this, it comes with a gate. It's high enough to where the deer can't get in. It's not going to be a huge garden, but it'll probably be enough to feed a family of 4. Would you think, if you had vegetables in here year-round?
Absolutely.
So, all right. So I'm going to let Bob and Karen take it away and tell you how to go about doing this.
So the first thing, we had Cindy and Barry shovel out any of the debris, any of the weeds that had started coming up in this bed area. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to lay cardboard down. Cardboard is going to serve as a weed block, and it will also eventually biodegrade. Whereas if you used a true weed block, that's really not a good plan. That's not going to biodegrade. So Bob's going to start spreading out this cardboard. We're going to leave that back corner open. We're not going to cover that because Cindy and Barry already have some asparagus planted back there, and we don't want to impede that. So just 1 layer of cardboard. You can overlap the pieces so that you get a full coverage.
There's no reason to cut to fit.
And this is considered a type of lasagna gardening. You always want to start with either layers of newspaper or cardboard for that weed block. And then if you can buy pre-mixed dirt for your raised beds, or you can make your own. If you make your own, you want to have a combination of compost, manure, and usually some worm castings and some sort of peat, just to kind of all mix in. But we have found for ourselves, the first time we did our raised beds at home, we did that. We bought all the different ingredients. But we have found a raised bed mix that works so well, and it has all of those ingredients in it already, so it just makes it easier.
Done.
All right, so we've got the cardboard in. Now we're going to move to the next step. Our next step is to start putting in the bedding mix. Again, you can do the all different ingredients, but we're going to do the all-in-one, and Bob's just going to start spreading it, dumping it in. And as mentioned earlier, you really want your beds to be deeper than this, especially if you're going to plant things like tomatoes and squash, cucumbers, those sort of things. You need that depth. Since we're doing a shallow bed today, though, we're going to go with plantings that have a shallow root, that don't require that depth.
Okay, the placement of the plants is important because some plants grow straight up, some bush out, need a lot of real estate. Broccoli and cabbage will do that. They'll grow up and out, so they're going to need about 18, 20 inches diameter. The spinach and the lettuce don't need so much direct sunlight, so they can use just ambient or diverted light. So what we've done here is planted large plants towards the back and the smaller plants to the front. And in the places all in between, we're putting 10, 15 onions because they grow straight up. They don't need a lot of real estate, and they'll do fine between all these. So it should be a myriad of all kind of groceries through here.
And everything that's planted in here right now, the greens, the broccoli, the kale, these are your winter crops. and they're going to be finished. When the weather starts getting hot, they're going to be done. Your lettuces and your spinaches, all of these are going to bolt. So what's going to happen is they're going to get tall, they're going to get flowers on them, and that's when they're done. So the onions take a long time. These aren't going to be ready to harvest until June. And so that's why we can plant these in amongst the others right now, because all of this other stuff's going to come out long before these will be ready. So what we're going to do is we're going to plant these about an inch.
No, the directions say an inch, but since it's dead of winter, we're going to go a little bit further. I just like to go finger depth, drop it in the hole, you're done.
And you just want to leave enough room between each of these to imagine what the size of that onion is going to be when you harvest it. You want to leave probably a good 3 inches between each of the plants.
Okay, so the garden's completely planted now. Everything's in its place. We've covered up a whole lot of area with variation of vegetables out here. We're going to water it in really good, and then later on it needs to be watered in again, because this potting soil is going to soak it up and swell and close up all the little gaps. We planted the onions a little bit deeper than required because it's dead of winter and those get protected more from the cold. Normally they survive, sometimes they don't. The rest of these things should be just fine through the winter. And then once we're finished, we're going to lay out soaker hose, which will be on a timer, so it gets watered every 3rd day, saturate the ground, and then let it dry out for a few days. The nice thing again about this potting soil is when you go to harvest the onions, they pull right out of the ground. You don't break anything. Of course, the broccoli and the cabbage are on top of the ground, but to get the roots out later, grab them and pull them. The ground is so soft. A little information about the onions. When they start to really sprout up in late spring, they're going to grow straight up and have a few leaves coming out the sides, but out of the center they'll put a stalk every now and then, which is going to flower and go to seed. Clip it off, just break it off with your hand. You don't want it to go to seed. Then now the rest of the nutrients go into making the bulb of the onion itself that you're going to harvest. And when you do harvest them, they need to be dried out, usually in a cool, dry area. I put mine in the barn with a fan across them to accelerate the drying out of the green tops. And then once they're completely dried and brown, scissors, take the tops off, take the roots off, put them in a cool place in the house, in the pantry. Ours keep 6 to 8 months. We also do garlic the same way. Garlic gets planted in fall, so it's too late now to put garlic in, but we've taken garlic pods out this big out of the garden. So you don't have to buy that kind of thing. We try not to plant things that take up a lot of real estate, like corn, potatoes, things that vine and bush out. Tomatoes, you can stake them straight up. Green beans, straight up. Anything that vines, like spaghetti squash, you can run across the fence here and keep it off of the ground. It just gives you more real estate that is not, horizontal to the horizon. If you're going to plant plants that like to vine, like tomatoes, cucumbers, squash, things like that, it takes a lot of energy for the roots in the plant to push water and nutrients straight up. So as they come out of the ground, make them go horizontal along the fence. You can tie them up or zigzag them through the fence, horizontal, and then snake them back and forth. And they'll keep growing in length, and you'll get a very large yield out of that instead of letting them grow on the ground where they can get bugs and water rot and things like that.
And Bob, so our next step is going to be to lay out the soaker hose, which is all we have, just a cheap soaker hose. And you said, I remember you telling me about that, if it starts clogging up, what do you do?
The minerals and things in the water will clog up the little pores in those soaker hoses over time. I just take an ice pick or a nail or something, and on the bottom of the hose, just poke a hole near the plants. That way you're not spraying water up, you're spraying it down to the ground. And the soaker hose needs to be on a timer. So the first time you turn it on, you'll poke all your holes where you think you need them, and then watch to see when the ground is saturated satisfactorily, and then set your timer accordingly. Every 3 days, water, same amount of time.
Well, this turned out amazing. I am so excited to see how this all rolls, and it definitely looks like something that I'm not going to be spending a lot of time weeding. So I'm thankful for that. Thank you very much.